It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, June 20th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content is going to make some draft eligible prospects compete against each other for our Flyers vote.
Makes sense. They're used to competing.
We are going to give our Hockey Hall of Fame selection predictions, plus Reinbacher versus Sandin-Pellikka and Michkov versus Moore, all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there. Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with prospect expert Russ Cohen, who is on Twitter at Sportsology. You can subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube. We're on the Sirius XM app. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll get the latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. And speaking of subscribing on YouTube, we do have a winner for the
Awesome
Carter Hart card that we are giving out, and we will let you know who that is at the end of today's show. Russ, a little bit of Flyers news before we get into our Hockey Hall of Fame conversation. Anthony DeMarco over at Fourth Period says that we're going to get the new Flyers jerseys revealed today.
Yeah, it's interesting. We did hear a little buzz weeks ago. I think we saw conceptual something or other, right? But I did see a lot of fans saying that they didn't want it to be from the Lindros era, or at least certain ones from the Lindros era. And, you know, their front office is jammed with guys
I know.
from that era. So, like, I can't imagine it's not going to be from that era. That's the funny part that went through my mind. But look, I mean, I know people get very picky about this. I'm not as picky about it.
Yeah, I think, there's pros and cons, right? I
Yes.
love those 90s orange jerseys. I'm a huge fan of the fact that they're going back to the previous shade of orange. Like I've said before, I think it's better when it's the brighter orange, that more than the muted one we've had over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, like
But
tune it up. Bright is bright. I
yeah,
like bright anyhow.
yeah, I think that, if you want something exactly like that, that may not be the way to go. Like you got to have something new in it because of course, according to Flyers, it is a new era of orange,
Right.
not an old era of orange. So it's got to be like something that evokes that era, but with
Right.
something a little different to it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And like I said, there's going to be, my prediction is 50% will like it, 50% will hate it.
That's always the way with jerseys,
It really
I think.
is.
And I'll probably buy one anyway, regardless.
You will.
So
I mean, there's no question you will.
there we go. All right. Moving over to the Hockey Hall of Fame selection predictions. The announcement for that will be tomorrow. And I'm very excited about the possibilities for this year. I know there was a little bit of a backup because of COVID and missing a year. And I feel like we're back on track in terms of the regularly scheduled induction nominees. And just to remind you, there's a maximum of 4 spots for men, 2 spots for women, 1 spot for ref, and maximum of 2 for the builders category. And so, not all of those spots have to be used. They have to
Right.
get 75% of the vote
That's the key.
of the 14 people on the panel in order to get that nomination. So it's not guaranteed we'll see all of those spots filled, but I'm certainly hoping that for once we'll get 2 women in because again, with the backlog and with so many women who are so well deserved, if we don't get 2, I think it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it would be nice to see. I think if FanDuel had odds, you'd be not playing the favorite based on what they've done in the past, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't do it now.
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways they'll go with the women. Either they're just gonna nominate one and it's gonna be Jennifer Botterill because that is long overdue.
Yes.
She's just been a world-class hockey player, so many international championships, and it was a leader of Team Canada. And so Absolutely well deserved. But of course, my pick, being a Team USA girl, would be I would like Caroline Ouellette and Julie Chu to get inducted together as a married couple, one from Canada and one from the US. And I love everything about their story. They're amazing people, and they're some of the most incredible hockey players of all time.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, I've had a really one or two really good interviews with Julie Chu. One of them for the outdoor game that was in New England, at where the Patriots play, whatever they call that stadium now. And and she's tremendous. Like she could really
She's so
she
smart.
commands a room. She is smart. She's engaging. She had a hell of a career. Like I would love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. That is what I'm rooting for. But again, Jennifer Botterill, she gets in.
Nobody's gonna
Honestly,
argue, obviously.
nobody whatsoever. Over to the men, which I guess we have to talk about them, right?
You kind of do, right?
You kind of do. Just kidding. But I think obviously the biggest slam dunk is Henrik Lundqvist. I think that, if there's any goaltender that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame on first ballot, it is Henrik Lundqvist.
Well, I'll tell you what seems to draw the most heat when I have told people over the years, as much as I revere Mike Richter and do believe he should be in the Hall of Fame, Henrik Lundqvist is a better goalie. And
Yep.
people are like, what are you talking about? He never won a cup. And it's like, listen, go look at the teams, go look at the defense in front of him and everything he had to deal with. He is the better goalie. He just is. It's not Richter's fault. Richter was a great goalie, but I would put Lundqvist in as well. The problem with anything else now is you're asking for two, and the Hockey Hall of Fame puts in like one goalie every 5 to 10 years. Like I can't imagine they would put two in.
Right. Well, that's where Curtis Joseph might get the short end of the stick.
Yeah.
Again, right?
Again.
Because I think Cujo has been in the conversation for a while now, but there's just not been a spot for him, whether they've been going with skaters or whatnot. It's just been not his time. And it feels like it could be his time if they went with two goaltenders, but that also seems kind of rare. But again, I think we're in this weird lull where there's like a lot of guys that I feel like could get 50 to 60% of the vote, but maybe not that 75% of the vote. Then that's your Rod Brindamore, your Hank Zetterberg. I think that there's going to be a lot of disappointed people after this selection comes out.
Like this is a good year to put in some of the ones that have been passed over, right? But because
Yeah.
of what you're saying, like the 75%, some of them are going to get screwed. There's no way to put it. And so
Yep.
like online, there's going to be some very heated debates on Twitter. Like the minute after everything happens on Wednesday, I hang up the call because I'm always on it and it's going to be on, right? And
Mhm.
look, I like Rod Brindamore as a player. I can't see a path for him yet for the Hall of Fame. Now, maybe if he wins another Stanley Cup as a coach, then you start saying, all right, look, coach, player, you're allowed to put all the guys' achievements. Then I might do it. He was a really good player, Rachel. He was not like an immortal great. He's just not.
Right.
So that's
Exactly.
so I get it. People love him. I get it. Zetterberg, kind of the same thing. Zetterberg, like on cup teams, very successful, known for his offense and his defense, but nobody ever called him a superstar or thought of him as a superstar. And so it's like Zetterberg, I have a hard time with too. Maybe I'll change over the years. Now, Alexander McGillney, everybody looked at him as a superstar. Why
Yep.
he's not in, I don't
100%.
know. Is it the era? Because like they're like, oh, what did he score? 76 goals one year? Like, I don't know. Were they too easy to come by, the 76 goals? Like, I don't know. But the guy was amazing everywhere.
Yeah,
And even when he won a Stanley Cup with the Devils, he was still really good.
that's the no-brainer to me. Like other than Henrik
Yes.
Lundqvist, he's the no-brainer.
I know he doesn't have 500 goals, but who cares? Like, he didn't have a full career. He had a nice 16-year career because he didn't come over sooner. But 127 points in that 76 goal year, like, come on. I don't even know what we're talking about here, but somebody doesn't like him, I guess. That's what it seems to be. My other one is Patrick Elias. This is a guy who really carried himself with class, won multiple cups, was a really always the team's best offensive player, really, as a forward on a mostly defensive team with a great goalie. And so I look at Elias and he was, a many-time All-Star, and I just felt like, he went about his business. He scored a lot of points, and I do think he is deserving because again, he played on a team that played the trap. Like, what was the offensive chances for that guy compared to a team that played a wide open hockey game? He still had over 1,000 points. Like, it's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was one of those standout offensive players in that trap system. Like,
Yeah.
there's no question. He's always somebody that kind of got under my skin as somebody who was a fan of not the team he was playing on at the
Yeah, he would
time.
score
But
clutch goals. Like
yeah,
I'm looking up his playoff numbers because I'm pretty sure they're pretty good. 125 playoff points. I mean, in years he won the Stanley Cup, he had 20 points in 23 games. And another year that they lost the cup, 23 points in 25 games. Another year they won the cup, 13 points in 24 games. Like some really good years. I get it. We're not talking superstar, but definitely a star. And I think when you put it all together and you look at the way that that team played, um, I think he did excel what you could do in that system.
yeah, I think he has a good case to be made, and I guess we'll see. As far as the builder category, I've seen Ken Hitchcock's name thrown about. I've also seen Fran Ryder, who is the woman who basically created the system for international women's hockey, like laid the groundwork in terms of tournaments in Canada and created the first national championship, which finally made the IIHF say we need to have a women's world championship. So that could be a possibility.
Yeah, it's interesting with Hitchcock. I actually got the first interview in town in Philly with him because I had a couple of retired greyhounds at the time. I adopted them, and he was a big greyhound supporter when he was in Dallas. So we chatted about that. That's mostly what we chatted about before he became the Flyers coach. And just super good guy, but really good for the game. I would have no problem with Hitchcock. I'm also going to put the name of Larry Kwong out there. He only played one shift for the Rangers, 60 seconds back in 1948, but he was the first Chinese Canadian hockey player and did break the barrier for Asian players. So he kind of laid the groundwork for players like Paul Correa and Matt Dumba and, the Robertson twins now and, a few others. And I think it is something worthy that really back in the day, we wrote about him in the 100 Ranger Greats. He was mentioned and probably in both of the Ranger books that I wrote for, but pretty big achievements. And I know there's some groups out there putting out petitions, trying to get him in and from the Asian community. And I'd like to see it because there's one thing about the Hall of Fame and the game of hockey. If it truly is for everybody, you should see yourself in the game. And, for Asian folks, it's been a little harder to kind of see themselves in the game. You know what I mean? It's more recent now with the Robertsons, but this would also help that cause.
Yeah, I think so as well. We'll see what happens tomorrow and we'll talk about it then. In the meantime, we're going to start our versus conversation on the show, and we're going to start with Reinbacher versus Sandin-Pellikka on the defensive side of things coming up next.
For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win with the right part when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
We'll be continuing these versus conversations later in the week, so stay tuned for some more tough choices that the Flyers could be making for the 22nd overall pick. In the meantime, David Reinbacher versus Axel Sandin-Pellikka. And we've talked about both of these guys on the show as far as like probably the two top defensemen that we're looking at in this year's draft. And there's been a lot of noise around Reinbacher being the top defenseman in this draft and that the Flyers have a really strong possibility of picking him. Russ, I know you like Axel Sandin-Pellikka a little bit better.
I do.
And so, like, basically, how are their styles similar or different? And why do you have Sandin-Pellikka above Reinbacher?
So both could play the power play, but Sandin-Pellikka is more of a accelerant on the power play. Better shot, better passer for sure. Just a guy that once he gets into the offensive zone and gets the puck, very much a threat. Like Reinbacher, really good on his entries too. Definitely will get rid of the puck, has a really good shot. But he's not a guy that you're going to like work the power play through a lot. Maybe that changes over time. I haven't seen enough of that to get me to say that. Now, Reinbacher plays more physical. I get it. As we pointed out at the combine, he's not physically stronger yet, like Sandin-Pellikka is right now, pound for pound.
Right.
And so, like, I know the thought is, well, you want Reinbacher because he's going to kill people out there. He's going to hit him real hard, and he's going to be a guy that just mashes guys in the corner, and he'll get points too. But Sandin-Pellikka plays really good, smart defense with his stick. He knows how to do it. He knows how to get the puck and get it the other way too. No ego on this guy. Very good speed. Very excellent puck handler. Like, he's really, really good. Once he's got the puck up the ice, coaches trust him. I mean, again, he was on the power play in the World Juniors as a young guy.
Yep.
And they had no problem putting him out there. He didn't score a lot, but who does? Like, at that age, generally as a defenseman, it's hard to. Erik Karlsson comes to mind. Like, he was a whiz, right? But it's Erik Karlsson. I'm not saying Sandin-Pellikka is anything like that. But what I'm saying is, if you want a guy with a better offensive upside who can play defense, I think you go with Sandin-Pellikka. I think they're both going to be 4s. Maybe Sandin-Pellikka is a 3. But I think either way, I think if I'm the Flyers, I kind of want the guy with the more points. I get it that the brass may want someone who's actually more physical, but more physical doesn't mean better defender, right? I mean, I think that's
Oh,
what
yeah.
we have to get used to that, because I do think Sandin-Pellikka is a good defender. And so I think that's something where I think his defense is better than average and his offense is way better than average, where Reinbacher's defense is way above average and his offense is average.
Yeah. I think those are fair points. And when you're looking at these two guys, and everybody, I think, is very clear that neither of them are top pairing defensemen,
Right.
right? And that putting aside the argument of do you pick a defenseman here or not, given that neither of them are top pairing defensemen, and if for a top 10 pick, you would hope, if you're taking a defenseman, that that's where they would end up.
Yeah.
I think you do. If you are going to pick one of them, you really have to go with the more well-rounded game, because your second pairing, you have to be a more well-rounded defenseman and not have a specialty. That's how NHL defenses are run in
No,
general.
that's true. I mean, looking from that perspective, that's a good point. Also, you can only go with the cards you're dealt, but I have heard the argument that, let's say Sandin-Pellikka is a 3. A 3 in the NHL is worth as much as a top line winger, but not a center, right? So if the Flyers go get a center and that guy's a top line center, then that's a higher piece and it's worth more. But then, yeah, number 3 defenseman's, next in line after that center, like tied with the wingers, because they're super important now. And you could see, like, as an example, people are already saying on the free agent market, good luck getting defensemen. There's not many good ones. Like Shane Gostisbehere is one of the best ones out there. I'm not really ripping him. I'm just saying, like, he's an okay defenseman. He's got his pluses offensively and his minuses defensively. But to get these kinds of guys, you generally don't get them in free agency. You generally have to draft them. And that's why, especially on defense now, when, we're a defensive league, they come at a high premium.
If you really are going to pick David Reinbacher at your 7th overall pick here, I think you really have to take all of it into consideration as far as where you think he would end up with the Flyers in the path and what his role would be here. And I
Right.
understand the game changes a little bit. So again, like we've been saying, you have to project into the future with this. I think that you have to take into consideration that you don't have high scoring defensemen in the system on this team at
Correct.
all. You
Now,
just
even
don't.
York is going to have to prove that he could do that
Mhm.
again, because right now he's not doing that.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a missing piece in the overall Flyers system is a
Yep.
scoring defenseman. And is David Reinbacher that guy? Could be. Don't
Could
know.
be, but
But
I don't think
but
so.
I
Not
think
to the degree.
with Sandin-Pellikka, I think there's a little bit more certainty there,
Yeah.
on that front, and that's something to take into consideration. Now, if that's not a priority for them, fine, take David Reinbacher, and I'm not, like, you know, putting Reinbacher down. Like you said, he's a very good defenseman, and there are very good aspects
Yeah.
to his game. He has great vision and all of that, and I've seen him play internationally. I think he's fantastic. I just think that that's something you have to take into consideration is what are the missing pieces in your prospect pool.
No, and I think that's a fair point because, it's easy to say, just take the best player on the board. That's fine, and sometimes that does work, but sometimes teams do have to look at it and take what's best for them too. And I don't
Yeah,
always go with the BPA. I don't.
right, and I think when you're talking about taking a defenseman at 7, that's something you should consider. I think if you're taking a forward, it's just BPA. That is my opinion in this draft.
Well, you're not going to go
But
wrong in this draft on BPA, but I still sometimes think you can match it up. But I get what you're saying. It's not a bad way to go. It really isn't. Uh, but yeah, like so. As for defensemen, if Sandy Pellick is gone, then I could see why they would be interested in Reinbacher. If the two are lined up, like again, I just don't know why I would take Reinbacher over Sandy Pellica. I mean, again, unless you think because Reinbacher is bigger and he's eventually going to be more, he's going to be stronger. Okay. But then that sounds like more of a size bias than a reason.
all right. Well, we have another tough choice for the Flyers at 7th overall if they're thinking about Matvei Michkov or Oliver Moore, and we're going to talk about that coming up next. All right, Russ, I think, part of the reason why we wanted to do Michkov versus Moore here was number one, that was our viewer slash listener choice on the YouTube comments as far as their top two choices. And so I thought that would be an interesting discussion to have. Also, Michkov has a lot more talk swirling about in terms of is he going to come over for the draft? Is he going to talk to teams? Who's he going to talk to? I think that people are starting to like reconsider him in a way that they hadn't earlier, that they had some doubts there. And then Oliver Moore, I think, has been sort of buried in the conversation to a large degree with the rise of Ryan Leonard and all of that.
Hmm.
But Oliver Moore is still a fantastic hockey player and is more likely to be available at 7, given where things are right now. So, why do you think people are more high on Michkov in the last month or so?
Well, first things first, Michkov is the more talented hockey player because his offense can be off the charts, right?
Hmm.
So, as far as like, who could be the superstar? Sure, it's Michkov. I don't think anybody thinks Moore is going to be a superstar. Doesn't mean he can't be, but don't think he's, destined for that. Uh, Michkov is, it's not all offense either, but the release on his one timer is next level. It's great. He's amazing on the power play. He's smart without the puck. He could deke around defenders. He's a lot of times a step ahead. He could score those crazy goals that, down low where you lose sight of him. And then all of a sudden he's behind your defense. Um, when he goes full speed, very hard to handle. Has a lot
Yeah.
of shots in his arsenal. So when you're talking about Moore, but he's a winger. So that's a part of it. So when you're talking about Moore, he plays winger and center. Uh, there's a good likelihood, I think a very good likelihood that he's a number one center. Now, it's possible when he goes to Minnesota that doesn't happen in his first year. If with Logan Cooley still there, they might want to build a super line. And if they do that, Moore may have to play on the wing. But if it's him and Cooley, Cooley's going to be the center. He's the older guy, and Cooley is a little better than Moore, like he just is. So there's no slight there. Moore has like legs like tree trunks. He's maybe the fastest skater in this draft. He's smart. He's another guy that's good two-way. He's another guy that's a line driver because he's basically had to drive his own line with that USA team, scored a lot of points doing that. And I don't think gets near the recognition of the other top three because the top three is the fancy line that gets a lot of it, and Moore just happens to get the job done. But he gets it done in his own way, and he's really, really effective. So he's got a great shot, and he's very smart. The hockey IQ is there. And again, his speed through the neutral zone is special. Like a lot of times I could spot that on certain players. I remember seeing Nathan McKinnon in juniors. I went to a junior game and I was like, wow, I can't believe this guy's speed through the neutral zone. It's crazy. And I'm not saying more is McKinnon like, but I'm saying it's, it's in the ballpark. And, his passing, Oliver Moore is really accurate. And he's used to having guys drawn to him so he could basically make that big pass. His puck possession's good. I mean, that's another thing that's really good. Now, he is not the biggest guy. I think he's 5'11".
Yeah,
but
he's not small. He's
not
just kind of
small. No,
slightly smaller than average.
that's it. And that's all it is. I mean,
Yeah.
everything else is compete. It's all there. So if the Flyers decide, hey, it's a risk for Michkov to come here. He didn't really give us a feeling that he might come here any sooner or really wants to come ever. I know people are saying that, and I guess there's a 5% chance he'll never play for you, but I don't think that's going to happen. I do think he'll play in the NHL, but you do have to consider that. Like there's a 5% chance that he may never play, right? And there's a 100% chance Moore is going to play unless he gets hurt, right? I mean, those are facts. So, but again, it's a tough decision. And I can see either one being a good decision.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I do think the risk would be worth it for Michkov. I absolutely do. But at the same time, me personally, I've seen more of Oliver Moore. I watched him play in U18 Worlds. I've seen him play in other circumstances. And, the couple of things that stood out to me, I think are something that the Flyers could use. He's great at faceoffs.
Yep.
And he was a plus 42 in the USHL this year. Like he plays a complete game.
Yeah.
And he's going to lead your team in a way. I really think he has strong leadership potential. He's going to be the guy that runs a line out there, even though he's a winger. And I just really think there's so many good aspects to his game. I think, University of Minnesota is going to be really good for him. I think that there's a lot of upside to Oliver Moore that it would be sad to not see in a Flyers uniform. I think, given if the chips fall in terms of the previous picks and this is where you're at, and both of these guys are available and you're looking to take a forward, this is a tough choice. But
yeah, I mean, he's a guy that, there's some comparisons with Dylan Larkin. A quote from him that he told me earlier in the year, it's that whether he's shooting or passing, he's trying to make the right read. He's trying to be an all-around player, not a one-dimensional one. And he is, when you watch him, for sure he is not one-dimensional.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, if the Flyers are looking to make a splash, go with Michkov.
Sure.
Just do it.
That's the splashiest of splashes you could make.
It is. It's like planting a flag and saying, we're doing this, people. And we're gonna wait for him. And we're going to have everything that would be around him in place. And we're going to build everything around him for when he comes. Right. And it's going to be glorious. And I would love that.
Sure. Yeah, I have no problem with that at all.
Yeah. All right. Partially very glad I do not have to make that choice for the Flyers. I could just get to react to it and say whether I like it or not.
Tough decision.
Yeah, that is what we do on this show. Want to circle back to the giveaway winner for the YouTube subscriptions. Congratulations to Edward Eichel. And I will, once this episode goes live, put a comment on your post over there, Edward. And then you'll send us an email with a screenshot showing you're subscribed and your mailing info. We'll get you that Carter Hart Young Guns card. Congratulations. We've got another giveaway coming soon. We're rapidly approaching the 900 mark. So if you're not subscribed to YouTube yet, please do so. And you'll be able to enter the next one. That will do it for today's show. Thanks for making us your first listen today. And everyday listeners, we're going to be talking more about the draft, and we've got your mailbag questions tomorrow. Plus, we'll maybe consider those qualifying offers and what those deals could look like. So interesting times for the Flyers indeed. And if you want to ask us those mailbag questions, you can tweet us at Locked On Flyers, email us at lockedonflyers@gmail, or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.